I'm really excited tonight to welcome Well-Read Black Girl community and celebrate this amazing program. And thank you so much, Glory, for bringing your party to the Center for Fiction. Um, and to start us off tonight, the amazing Mahogany Brown is going to come up. Mahogany is also the host of our Brooklyn Campfire Stories series here. The next one is the second Sunday in November, so check that out and come back and see us. And please welcome Mahogany Brown.
Woo! Good evening.
Good evening.
Look at your neighbor and say, how you doing tonight?
Hey.
Say, you look beautiful. You have survived. Today is a day that I am so glad to be here and just welcome you and introduce the panel because Glory Edim is one of my most favorite angels of this lifetime. First, I will introduce Staceyann Chin, and then I want to read one of my favorite moments from her poem for you. Staceyann Chin, poet, performing artist, and LGBT rights political activist. I think they mean LGBTQIA. Word. Her work has been published in the New York Times, Washington Post, Pittsburgh Daily, and she's been featured on 60 Minutes as well as the Oprah Winfrey Show. Staceyann Chin is a full-time artist, resident of New York City, a Jamaican national, and has been an out poet and political activist since 1998. Her new book, Crossfire, everybody say ooh, will change your life. I want to quiet you, like quick, like cunt, like hollow, like whole. I want to hold you holy like prayer, like benediction, like intercession, like hallelujah, like hallelujah, like hallelujah, like amen. Give it up for Staceyann Chin, who'll be coming to the stage. And, of course, Glory Edim. Enthusiastic reader and the founder of Well-Read Black Girl. If you have the t-shirt, if you follow the Instagram, if you follow the Twitter, you're already ahead of the curve. It's also a nationwide book club online community celebrating the uniqueness of Black literature and sisterhood. In fall 2017, she organized the first ever Well-Read Black Girl Literary Festival. We are arriving on the third annual, which is November 2nd, correct? Right here in Brooklyn. She's received awards from Los Angeles Times in 2017 and just was crowned with the Hurston Wright Award, the Legacy Award. What? And literally, her opus is just making sure women, Black women specifically in literature, find a space, a sacred space to hold each other. And she says, I am very proud to be a part of that cultural shift. The question of representation and equality in publishing remains an important and necessary one. In this collection, 21 Black women who hold diverse backgrounds and experiences share intimate memories around discovering literary reflections of themselves. They reveal what influences their craft, drives their curiosity, and defines their legacy. I am guided and inspired by each of these women. I count them among the writers who have transformed my life. And she is going to transform our lives tonight, along with Staceyann Chin. Please welcome to the stage Staceyann Chin and Glory Edim.
You know, these sticks always fall apart when I touch them. That's like a lesbian joke for the rest of you. How you doing?
I'm good.
Thanks, Mahogany. Mahogany can really make a room like wake up because everybody was kind of like vibing and like drinking like rooibos and like trying to be like, oh yeah, I'm just so chill. I'm just like talking about like the grade of curls I have. And then she just gets up on the stage and speaks, and everybody's like, yeah, we're up, we're in it. Things happening now. Thank you very much, Glory, for inviting me to speak tonight. You know, I'll talk later. I'll just read. No. I had a very... All right, this one's called Take Back the Night. It's dark again, and the familiar demons wrest my innards. Low down, the slow moan of flesh being ripped, innocence awkward and torn, we are all sworn to secrecy. Don't tell. Don't say nothing to nobody. Nobody will believe it happened to you. Blue bruises, some of us bled. The rest carried the broken vessels in braille. Rail silent against a truth constructed. Swallow the scum of him in the dark. Park the sniveling, tear-stained lump that you are under the smiles, the tales of, yes, I'm managing. Decades later, the flashes will blind your ability to love. Tell you, you do not deserve passion, the candor, the ardor of any love that holds you without violence. You will second guess yourself. Shelve the little girl calling for help. She lost her voice under that muffled theft. She cried out, and her throat broke. Now, she don't sing unless something is hurting. How we mask that thing, fling it grinning under the facade of flirting, girding our loins with lust, tainted with silences, grief. Thief that he was, the prince of him remain. For years, years, I was afraid of the dark. Still, can't sleep too deeply. Sex and my body must always be watched closely. Slowly walks the healing of all this bad feeling, fueling fears of not being good enough, pretty enough, smart enough, quick enough to stop him from scarring that small body. How I still sweat that moment before. Could I have stopped it? Could I have saved me had I screamed, shouted, mouthed a mantra like, let me go, you fucking fuck. Leave me here unbroken, unbent, unspent from your hands around my innocence. Let me go, let me go, let me go. If I had been able to voice it, to make him listen, to make him stop, would I now be whole, able to laugh without fangs, fuck without hang-ups, bang bang, before the gun of him went off? Was there anything I could have said, read, seen, heard to make him let me go before the shudders and the things that go bump in the dark, before I became afraid of my own pleasure, my own measure of being strong and woman, before my mother and her absence, before my aunt and how powerless she felt before she knelt before a God and made me the sinner, before I thought being thinner would make it better, before these unwritten letters marking my bruised skin, before I said no the first time, before he ignored me, before they all jumped me, before I froze, before he rose up and engulfed me. Was I anything then? What am I now? Now that I have found this voice, now that I know I had no choice, now that I can say out loud these scars are battles in a war I am winning. Now that I'm able to say these wars are nothing to the breath of my survival. Now that I am sure my arrival here was no accident. Now that I am able to see I am far from being spent. Now that I know this mouth is only a beginning, a low moan, a groan breaking sound and barrier, skin and glass. I'm finally able to see through me. I'm only a place to let the light in. The dark ain't got nothing on this bitch. I'm only a place to let the light in, which that I am. I can see you coming, motherfuckers. I recognize you, and you will never be able to silence my daughter. She will know that whatever you do to her is nothing to what we intend to do to you. In return, she will climb these hills of impossible memories. She will see you coming. You will not be unfamiliar. We will speak of you. We will belt you bile and bulbous from our mouths. We will talk as if you are only breath. The end of your reign is certain. We will break your violent cycle. We have already found voice. Be advised, we are now marching. We are now women roaring. Consider yourself notified of our intent to take back the night. One of the things I miss about being in New York is an intergenerational experience. You know, I don't see a lot of old women walking around. I don't have a lot of interaction with a lot of old women outside of my building. I remember when I just moved into my building in New York, it was Mad Caribbean, and it was 2000, maybe 2000, and Mad Caribbean. thick Caribbean accent, black people, and all my friends on Deaf Poetry were like, why are you moving there? But it was like $900 for the rent, so it was right, just right. Big space, high ceilings, great light. And these old ladies, when they heard I was lesbian, they were like very like unsure. And 20 years later, now they flirt with me in the elevator and tell me, I'm not wearing anything under this house dress, which is in itself magical. It's kind of how I remember life in the Caribbean. These old women just kind of joke, they just run up to you and like grab your boob and be like, oh my God, what you have there? And it never felt like violent, the hands of these old women who combed my hair and rubbed me down with oil so that as soon as you go outside, all the dust come to you and stick to you. So you're one giant mud, oily thing going to school. And so when I moved here, I particularly missed my grandmother. And so this poem is about my grandmother. Bernice Perry, The Details. My grandmother rises before the sun, alarms the morning with her hair almost white now, unfurling sturdy plaits of wisdom, thick and unrefined, like her philosophies, brushing the coils, separating the truths, until each wired strand is a filament, silver and black, reaching out to define the woman there, a moving chiaroscuro framed by the half-lit window. The silhouette glides unfettered into morning. Daylight streaks in, reveals the 117, perhaps 118 warts dancing circles under her eyes, some with edges flattened and frayed, seasoned like Sunday clothes, worn for more than 60 years of alleluias and amens. Some are new, itching with the rains, torrential like youth. She says, you are your mother's child, mouth always open in defense, feet always light in the leaving. The numbers grow sparse towards her mouth, permanently pursed in prayer. For the children who left for North America and never came back. She bears the scattered few for the grandchildren too, dark bubbles of hot chocolate floating in a milieu of broken promises and severed umbilical cords. She still believes in the crucified, still begins the day with a rosary of our names. Lord, protect them. Mavis, Howard, David, Blossom, Olga, Anne-Marie Delano, and Staceyann. Arthritic knees bent, she invokes our safety. Right hand resting on the large print Bible, one of them sent her from America. There is 87 years of fat in her tail. The telling has made it soft in places. So she is comfortable. My head upon her belly cushioned in the sounds of her cornmeal porridge sweetened with condensed milk. She nurses a desire to see me full-figured. Winces when I walk by in tank tops. Dreams of me in shifts and searches the nights for fish. Swim towards the muddy waters, away from the clear, for that is death. But moving gills promise life. And she wants the great-grandchild from me before she dies. She begs me, take care. And for God's sake, eat something. Drink a mug of comfrey every day and go to church once in a while. She survives her battles daily. Targets defined by round white tablets softened with tap water twice a day. Her gait is slow, precise. Error seasoned by experience. She cooks curry without a recipe and speaks truth without hearing. I am still cracking Uzis at everything that moves. She's still laughing at me, saying your trunk is still supple. Your sap, it will still bend. She cackles and tells me, when you have sacrificed entire branches to save one single leaf, that might be time enough. Time enough to call yourself a big woman tree. So I'll read one more before we start yapping it up here. And I wrote this one for my daughter, Zuri, who's in. Zuri, are you paying attention? Not really. She's playing boy, girl, animal things back there with some Caribbean women. And my mother left me when I was born and left my brother when he was 2. And I was telling Mahogany about the witch that my mother is and how you have to become kind of crazy when you become like a black immigrant into a white country. And this is the woman who, when I went to visit her in Cologne, Germany. I met her when I was 25, and I didn't quite know if she had any papers, but I was buying the ticket for her to come, trying to get her to come with my little sister. And I bought the ticket, and I came here, and she did a whole heap of crazy things and didn't want to come. Anyways, fast forward, and my mother didn't make the flight with me. And so I left thinking that, okay, she's not coming. She's just doing one of the crazy things that she does all the time. And then the next day, I get a phone call, my mother in Toronto. And this is a woman who has, and I come to find out that she has an expired Jamaican passport, no visa in it. And she flew from Cologne to Toronto and then got from Toronto to New York City. And I'm like, how does that happen? And she has all these stories in her life where she's like, had to get creative in order to live and take things from people who maybe didn't necessarily want to give it up so easily. But I've been tracing her steps over this last year, maybe 2 years, and maybe further than that. But I go to Cologne, Germany. I go to Montreal, Canada. I talk to people in Toronto. I talk to people in Jamaica, and nobody is willing to say anything bad about my mother. She's 70 years old now, lives in like assisted living for like the mentally, different in Cologne, and all these people. I'm like, all these people. Like, I say, how my mother, she was a nice lady. She's a very nice lady. But didn't she take your money? Yeah, yes, but she was very nice. She's a very nice lady. Even the man that she was married to, just drama, like just witch, like, because even when like I just slightly do some things to people, and somebody talk to them about me, they're like, that girl is such a bitch. Nobody, even if I apologize and give them money afterwards, like nobody is like saying she's a nice person, like, oh yeah. So I say all of that to say, sometimes when you hear the story from one perspective, you hear all of this stuff about like my mother who left me, and she left me and all these terrible things happened to me, and then I went and like saw she was living like the high life, and then I was like, oh my God, she just left me and is just living the high life. But she was 23 years old and she had 2 children, none of which she wanted, and she didn't have a choice. And I just had the experience of like having my own kid, and I was like, what if I didn't want this? And it was so hard, especially in that first year with no one to help me. And I had like a way to earn money, and I had like a home and people who respected me. And what if I was 23 with 2 children and I didn't want the children and I just had to have them because abortions weren't available or because I was sexually in spaces I didn't want to be or whatever? I'm just saying, like, the story is different sometimes. Anyways, ready? Yeah, you're getting a real quiet reading. So. For Zuri. Zuri Siale Semanyachin. Her name means vulnerable, resilient, rock of beauty, reason for love. I wanted her name to echo the warrior women who came ahead of her, ahead of me, Madonnas, whores, mad women in attics, virgins who were never really virgins except when they needed to be, smart women. Make your own list of saints, my daughter. Fondle it often. This rosary of Amazonian nomenclature. My own mother left early, left me inside a closed fist of unforgiving women who never expected me to ripen. The apple never fall far, they said. Watch that tree, it go come to no fruit. But look at you, daughter, shiny red apple tomato baby. It is my intention to be different with you. I can hardly wait to hear your voice. I expect us to rumble, to create generational bruises that will have to be survived. Forgive me, my daughter, for the sins I know will stain your childhood. Send you to some stranger's expensive couch to thrash out how your mother never loved you or loved you too much. I hope we'll be able to breathe through it. Not unlike the way I breathe through your coming. Oxygen mask over mouth. I mumble the list of saints I keep ready. Audrey Lorde, Adrian Rich, June Jordan. I called for Pat Parker, for my grandmother, Bernice. Your heart pulsed wild then. Rapid dance forcing them to slice me open. And suddenly, you were here. wide-eyed and alert, you surveyed the damage and did not blink. I remember thinking this shit should come with a fucking manual. I mean, somebody should be telling me what to do. My Brooklyn apartment is really too small for two people. Two people. God, I'm two people now. Two people, two mouths to feed, two asses to wipe, two bodies to keep safe, two of everything needed. Schizophrenic existence, dear God. What do I do now? What do I do now? What the fuck do I do now? And I was 40 and in a different place from a 20-year-old who had a different life. Anyways, Glory.
Yep. Okay, good. Okay.
I'm supposed to wait for the people to do this, but it's done.
All right, I'm coming. I was trying to give them their cue. You are so absolutely wonderful. Is this on? Can you guys hear me? Okay.
I have to put on this fancy necklace.
Okay.
No.
You got it?
Yeah, I think so. Not as complicated as a strap-on. But
Yes, that should be easier. Okay, let me put this behind me.
can I say strap-on here?
You can say whatever you want. I am so excited to be in conversation with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Thank you
no,
for having
thank
me.
you. I mean, I'm going to read some words from the foreword that Jacqueline Woodson wrote because
Lord.
the last sentence in her introduction really sums up how I feel about your work, and all the things that you've done as a spoken word artist, as a poet, as an activist, as a feminist, all these things that you bring to light in a way that I feel a lot of us wish we were brave enough to do.
Oh, Lord.
Like when I see you read your poetry and the stories that you tell without not a hint of reservation or compromise, it is just the truth. And I'm like, if I could do that. If I could just go on stage and tell my truth all the time without even thinking of any self-doubt.
I would give up all of those kind of confessional on the stage kind of thing if I had created Well-Read Black Girl.
Oh no, stop it. Stop it.
I would totally love to do that. Let's switch.
No. We can actually, let's just combine ourselves. Be one force, be one crossfire. And so Jacqueline says, step into the crossfire. This is a world you know everything about because in Staceyan's hands, the multitude of our everyday lives become a love song to anyone who has ever had to live life. A love song. And you just feel a range, when you listen to you read, you feel a range of emotions. You feel joy, you feel sadness, you feel empowered, you feel like you can be your best self, again, without that word that plagues me at times, self-doubt. And I want to know, I saw you at BAM and I was so moved because you walked on stage and you had you had all these papers and you're like, I've been carrying this around for how many years?
20.
20 years. So this is the book, but I've been carrying this around with me every single place I moved. You had it with you. How does it feel to take those papers that you were carrying around and now have your first collection? Because this is the first collection, and I was so surprised to hear that. How did this become the first? I feel like you could have volumes and volumes and volumes, but this is the first.
Well, for a long time, I thought that. I told the story at the BAM reading as well, but I grew up Caribbean, and we have, no matter what the literacy rate in any Caribbean country, there is a remarkably healthy respect for the written word.
Yes.
And a lot of that written word was created by men and by white men, and largely white men who are not Caribbean. And so I grew up reading John Donne and T.S. Eliot and Derek Walcott. And then when I was a young poet, I met Derek Walcott, and he invited me to come and study with him. And I was so excited, and I was so excited, and I was so excited. And I went down to Boston and studied with him for 6 months or so. And he would say, you have such a good, command of language. If you stop writing all this stuff about your vagina and all this feminist stuff, you'd be such, a powerhouse, And, there's a way that, like, I took that in my brain to mean that the work I was creating was moving in rooms where it existed for, when I look out at this audience and I see all of this, curly-headed, moisturized, shea butter wearing, patchouli smelling, musk on the wrist, you know what I mean? Color, every color in the rainbow in the audience. When I see this, I think, of course, we need to have our words spoken out loud, and we need to talk about not just our vaginas, but the survival of those vaginas and our booties and how we take up space and how we weren't given space and how we have to be loud, but then we have to come around and like save motherfuckers all day long and like wipe, and how our mothers had to wipe people's noses and not our own in order to feed us. I mean, just like I see all of that and I see how relevant that work is here in this room. Mm-hmm. But when I look at, I'd never been here before, the Center for Fiction. Okay. When I look at places that are institutional, there's a way that a part of me doesn't feel like I belong here. Mm. And
that's how I feel about publishing in a weird, odd way, because I came about it in a way that was very community driven. Wasn't I don't have an MFA. I didn't go to Iowa, and I'm like I don't know what you're talking about. Right. Like and so these things that would allow credibility and success in the publishing world, I have in a way bypassed that. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times when I walk into rooms, even the day I met, some of you know I met Oprah, the day I met her, I was like, I do not belong in this room. Mm-hmm. I don't know any of these people. But Ta-Nehisi Coates like cut through the line to say hi to me only because it was like, oh, you went to Howard? I went to Howard, right? Mm-hmm. And so yes, HU. And it was like, it was that kind of like, okay, like he sees me, and everyone else was like, how do you know him? But I walk into a lot of rooms feeling like I do not necessarily belong, but I also have this feeling of like, I do deserve, like I'm working just as hard, but the belonging is such a weird, do you feel like that's a weird word?
For sure. I mean, like, particularly it's an interesting thing because my being Caribbean means that and I'm stepping into like, muddy, dog poop conversation now. But there's a way that being not African American opens doors because white people seem to be a little more comfortable with us than they are because, we don't link them so deeply to their own like ancestral trauma.
Yes, let's tell the truth.
But anyways, I mean, so that on the one hand, but on the other hand, because my mouth is so uncensored, people get very uncomfortable with who I am, and I'm also one of those people that my opinion is not for sale. I never discuss with anyone what I'm about to do beforehand. If you can't let me do what I'm gonna do, then I am probably not I'm not a good choice.
Right.
Because I like to sit in the audience with people beforehand because I don't know, what I do feels like more of a conversation. It doesn't feel like a thing that exists on the page.
Right.
And there are many ways, that I worry that the thing that I've done for 20 years that have been resonating and pulsing and feeling so alive on stage, that will it transfer to the book? And there was maybe some fear about that, and what Derek said certainly played into that and made me feel like, I do this thing on stage, but maybe this thing that I do on stage doesn't belong in a book. But I see these white men get all like feverish about what the shit that's in the book as well. So I mean, it
translates.
It doesn't mean that fever doesn't translate to the page. I mean, a lot of the shit I read as a kid that moved me deeply was feverish, I mean, and I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting conversation that you bring up about this belonging. I mean, whiteness certainly makes you belong, and maleness makes you belong, and black women couldn't be further from any of those things, and then if you add like immigrant to it, and if you add I don't have straight hair, and if you have a booty that don't fit into like a size 2 jeans, I mean, I'm speaking from the outside of that just now. I mean, and if I mean, I don't know, like, you know, there's a way that, and if you potty mouth, and then if you don't date men, and there's so many things that move you further and further and further away from whiteness. And I think that even though I don't have the same ones you have, I feel like the collection is about the same. And I feel like I don't belong. And so I walk into rooms, I either have to decide that I'm gonna make these motherfuckers know that I don't care if you don't think I belong, I'm gonna take up some space.
Yes.
Or I'm gonna be like, let you not exist so that you won't fuck with my joy.
Yes.
You won't fuck with my ability to move through the room.
Yes. I feel like I lean on that side of things, like you don't exist. So when people, sometimes I would get these questions about like how do you do this? Or, are you concerned about the white gaze? And I'm like, that doesn't exist. like I'm not even thinking in those terms to even be concerned about it. And so it allows me to excel because that's not my measure of success.
I come in, looking for the white gaze to interrupt it. Like this is my, the way that I dress, the way that I speak, like everything about me, like it's meant to interrupt whatever the fuck you think is norm.
Yes.
Because I want to, push the boundaries of what you think is okay. So, I like it when we stray from whatever the norm is, whatever norm is, like I live to interrupt it.
Yes, I love that. And you can tell that definitely in your presence, but clearly in your work. And I think my next question will be just around construction, because I have heard you quote T.S. Eliot, and I know you know the greats. I know you have appreciation for such a vast amount of work, but when you are writing, when you went through these poems, especially the poems you read much earlier in your career to, present day, like what makes a poem for you?
I still don't know if it's a poem. I think that they think but my plays, my one-person shows are written with like line breaks. They're feverish, and I mean, if you open the book, the lines are elsewhere and you have slashes. Poetry, I think, is how human beings make sense of things that maybe are too intense for like prose. Like they don't have like beginning and end of thoughts and conclusions. But it's like pieces of like, if you were to walk down the street in New York City, and if you were just to hear one piece of a phrase here, and you walk further on and be like, get the fuck out of here. And niggas be eating like lots of shit over here. And then somebody else be like, oh yeah, it really is like, it really is an interruptive kind of statement. And so if you just walk through the city, like language coming from so many different kinds of people in so many different kinds of ways, and unexpected pieces of language, that's kind of how I hear the poetry of like that's how I hear it happening. It's very different from prose. Prose is like when I'm making an argument or I'm telling a story, and it's very finite. The poetry is like the shit I can't make sense of, like the stuff with my feelings and being a survivor, and like how orgasms happen or don't happen for me because they're connected to what happened to my body when I was a kid, or how I can't explain to my lover why I'm acting like an ass because I just don't have the language, I don't have the emotional language for it, I don't have the capacity. That's why these poems don't feel finite to me. They feel like just fragments I pulled that kind of feel like they belong to each other just because they happened in the same space or in the same time.
Yes, that makes complete sense to me. I'm also so struck by, you said it earlier, how you survive, like all these things that you're picking up, they pull towards your survival. And that is, in essence, the title, Crossfire, A Litany for Survival. How did you land on that title? Well, did it seem to feel very clear to you? Or?
For sure. Like, I think that my work is like, Derek Walcott said his work is just one long poem about like missing palm trees. And I think my work is, one long list of things that I make, that I'm trying to make sense of, like the list of things that America says I am, the list of things I left at home, the list of things that, and more specifically, the list of women whose work have kept me alive. And I pulled from the Audre Lorde litany for survival
I mean, because like it invokes me to speak, and you know, I feel like Audre Lorde more than anyone else has charged us to not keep silence, because silence is how perpetrators win, from like sexual assault to like, you know, police, you know, violence against, you know, Black people, to, you know, like microaggressions at work. Like the thing thrives on your silence. And because if you make noise, you risk so much.
Right.
You know, they're almost like guaranteed your silence.
Right.
And so it requires like an almost holy kind of reverent, like a litany. You have to be like in church, be saying that shit, rubbing them beads, and be like, yes, I will fucking say something tomorrow when that fucker cracker says something to me. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
like
right.
you have to like decide that I will not be silent tomorrow, and you have to like say it. You have to make it mantra, and you have to keep saying it, because the smart financial thing to do is to shut up.
Right.
You know, and so
to avoid the risk.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, because the risks are enormous for people of color, for women of color.
That's
I
true.
mean, you know, they love to talk about how we are stressful,
Angry.
and nobody talking about this situation being stressful. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's like the way they talk about like how slavery was fun.
Right. It's such an interesting thing, because I've been consumed with this idea of motherhood and this idea of mothering yourself. And as I read your poems, and you have such a great this intergenerational conversation, you mentioning your grandmother, you writing the poems to your daughter, it all comes together so beautifully. But you're also giving us a model of what revolutionary mothering can look like. And when you confront your fears, when you address these things up front with your young child and let them know there are things to be afraid of, but you don't have to be afraid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, or at least, you know, the fear doesn't have to define how you act or how you
Exactly.
respond.
Yeah.
You know, this, you know, there's a thing I just wrote where we're almost up. Okay. There's a thing we just talked about with, you know, whiteness criticizes Black mothering so deeply, and then they turn around and pay us almost nothing to mother their children.
Right.
I mean, and so like it's a remarkably like this. It's like discordant. It's like almost crazy. It's like.
It's a fragmented.
Yeah, you're like, you don't mother well, you don't mother well, come over here and mother my child, you know?
Right,
So it's like a weird truth, you know, I mean, but the truth be told is that one of the things that I'm really re-examining, and probably we'll talk about it, I'm writing about it in my next book, is how fucking revolutionary, you said it, Black mothering has been.
Yes.
Like how it is that these women with almost nothing,
Yes.
and you know, everybody stepping on their neck, how they have found a way to keep us alive, and it's not pretty. They fuck us up left, right, and center. We are in therapy, expensive therapy, as we speak. Therapy we cannot afford, because these women did such a piss poor job of like making us healthy and happy and like, you know, able to be like moving around like Betty Sue. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but you see what I mean? Like, and yet they kept us alive when we should have died. You know, Audre Lorde said we weren't meant to survive.
Yeah.
I mean, but these women with nothing, with massa on top of them hundreds of years ago, to, you know, Harvey Weinstein on top of them, to your co-worker on top of you, the subway on top of you, gentrification on top of you, like the Black men we love so much on top of us in our communities, like, and yet we doing it.
Yeah.
We still having like babies coming out of our bodies, and we still wiping them down with Vaseline, and still keeping them warm in this fucking place here. I mean, no one has talked about how fucking miraculous it is.
Yeah.
Like, nobody is questioning the Jewish mothers and asking why they're having such a hard time mothering during the Holocaust, while we are still in the midst of the Holocaust here, and we still
snatching babies out of ovens and putting them in safe space. And everybody talking about how black mothers don't mother and black mothers. And even us, we fall prey to that, to talk about how my mother don't mother, this one though, she leave me. Oh, you know, she not like, you know, Becky's mother, because Becky's mother was always listening and Becky's mother was like letting her go out and all kinds of shit. Like different realities for the white girl and her mother. Different considerations. And so I'm beginning to see how is pure witchery, wizardry, sorcery. These black women, especially we talk about immigrant women or women who move from like the south to come north without communities, without, listen, it's beer witchery. Witchery. These women keeping us alive and giving us mouth so that we could go found social movements to save other motherfuckers. I mean,
yes, talk about it. Well,
yes. Are we asking questions?
Yeah, we're gonna open up for questions. So there's Mike, and if you want to join the coven of Staceyann, we can. So if anyone has a question, just raise your hand high, and we'll go from there. If not, I can keep asking questions. No pressure. You have a question? Oh, the water. Thank you, sis.
Thank you. I got this Facebook thing for free, so please don't work for them.
judgment.
They don't pay me. Nothing. So don't look at it.
Anyone have a question?
No questions? Yes.
Thanks so much, Stacey. That was amazing. I'm Jamaican too, but I did the London, that colonial journey.
For sure.
So I just wanted to find out from you in terms of you were discussing at some point the immigrant black woman's journey from place to place. And I do feel that there is a mental perspective that's slightly different. Like, you know, I was born in Jamaica, but I went to England. So I wondered if you'd say a little bit more about that in terms of a worldview, how you see the world in a slightly different way.
I think that, and I'm going to get in trouble again. Are we selling books?
Yes, we are. Yes.
Sorry. But buy the book anyway, just because you agree with most of what I said, not necessarily all. But I do believe that the American mindset is very insular. Just like the European mindset is less insular, but is insular. I feel like those of us who have roots in other places, we have maybe we have access to a more we have quicker access to a global perspective, only because we understand that there's an Americanness that coats our behavior. You know, I'll tell you a short story. When I moved here and I lived here for a couple of years, I went back home to Jamaica. And then I spent some time with my friend. And my friend Maziki, Dr. Maziki fame, she is sitting across from me and she offers me a cup of tea. I take the cup of tea, I stir the cup of tea. I'm about to drink the cup of tea. I look down, there's some ants in the tea. So I said, oh, there's ants in the tea. And she said, oh, there was probably ants in the sugar. And then she kept saying what she was saying.
But there's ants in the tea.
But just stop and explain it to me, and then she just move on to this. So, like in my newly American, you know, mindset, I'm like, what the fuck I must do with this tea now? Because in America, I cannot drink this tea. It has ants in it. But she kind of saw me for a second, like deer in headlights, and she goes, you want a strainer? And so I strained the tea, and then I drank the tea. But, you know, there was nothing wrong with the tea, but like, you know.
Hilarious.
And it's how we are about everything. When I went to Europe, they're like, I was in the middle of winter in my shorts, and oh my God, it's so cold, oh my God. And somebody like, fucking put on a sweater, it's winter. But there's a way that we, you know, Americans take from the environment we toss things out, we don't, you know, so even that as a small thing. When something gets broken, we throw it out. And I think that in the large metropolises, that's kind of how we are with people. you know, if I call you up and you seem weird,
Yeah.
you know,
It can
and
be weird.
no, I mean you haven't been weird yet, but but I'm saying that I'm Jamaican, so if you're weird, I maybe call up my friend Maziki and say, "Boy, Glory's real mad weird," you know, and she'd be like, "Yeah, some people weird," and that would be the end of the conversation. But it doesn't mean that it's the end of our relationship, you know. Like in America, I think that there's a lot of, you know, these big cities. There's a lot of, you know, Mahogany. I call her, and there was a lot of silence on the phone when I was talking to her. So I'm not gonna call her again, and I'm gonna avoid her, you know, as opposed to like just kind of plow through it and stay in the friendship. And that's how friendships are made.
Yeah.
They're not made because like, oh my God, we got along every single time, and when we got together, it was just amazing, and we were just like doing amazing work all the time, and our connection was so tight all the time. Most of the time, like, a friendship remains a friendship because you remain in the friendship, right? And, you know, and you know, I have friendships that have been for 30 years where people are like strange for like 5 of them, you know what I mean? But you just stay in it, and I think that's kind of what feels like this newest American imperialistic culture is this culture of like disposability, this culture of throwing away not just things but people, and always looking for like the better friend to be with, the better event to be at, the better person, to the better hairstyle, the better outfit. But now I'm old, you know, ish. You know, I'm kind of maybe having a feeling of holding on to things a little longer. Friendships, my clothes, my shoes, you know, lovers. Yes.
I was going to say that I would say that it's our grandmother's perspective is a lot different from modern perspective, and I'm sure that the women in here, grandmothers and great grandmothers, had a certain mindset that was more grounded in non-wastage, community connection, relationship to the land. So I'm wondering if it's more of a modern kind of mindset thing, and a disconnection from the land and culture in general that's on another level. You know what I'm saying? Like,
there's definitely some of it attached to just modernity, or like, you know, the contemporary times we're in. But I find that, you know, when I go home today in modern Jamaica, they still fix the shoes, you know what I mean? It's the, I don't know, maybe because they just don't have the disposable income to just toss the shoe and buy, you know, like this time of excess, it doesn't extend to everybody on the planet. And so when you talk about modern, it's maybe just modern industrialized nations. But, you know, Jamaicans, you reuse everything, and there's not a lot of throwing away of anything.
No, I drank many a red ant in honey as a normal day-to-day practice.
For sure, for sure, for sure. Yes.
We're going to wait for the mic so they get. Yeah.
In your book, Crossfire, did you take on any particular methodologies to be able to compile your pieces, or do you have certain unique rituals that you do to put everything together?
This is the kind of question that made me feel like I don't belong. It sounds so like put together and
Methodology,
like,
yes.
I know
But
methodology.
you
I'm
do.
like, methodology. I'm fucking with you. My editor, Maya Marshall, was just very wonderful and organic. And because she knew I had like a lot of tension around the book and the poems and publishing, and it's the first time and blah, 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 she just more or less asked me more questions. And I don't think she ever gave me a directive, not once throughout the process. Just asked me, so, well, what do you think of this? So what were you thinking when you did this? So what does this mean? And she just kept asking those questions over and over, and the thing just kind of evolved organically. In terms of like placement, she just kept sending me a draft back, and I kept making comments and sending them to her, and she would ask me questions, and then I would make changes, and then I would send them back to her. Like, it felt very much like a, you know, like a meal that we're making in Jamaica. It's like everybody's sitting there and be like, I think you need more salt, you know.
encounter any writer's blocks in the moment of compiling this? And if so, like, how did you
I
get
didn't have
through
to
that?
worry about writer's block because so many of these poems, they were written over 20
Yeah.
years. But I have poems that were written when I was 25 years old, and then I have poems that were written this year. Mm-hmm. And before we finish, I want to read the one poem that you mentioned about my brother. Yeah, before we finish. Any more questions? Anybody with any burning questions?
I'm West Indies, so I wanted to know was there any kind of cultural thing that you were raised with that may have been toxic or good that you will now put into your daughter or not put into her?
So things that were toxic and things that were not good, like what I leave and what I take. Yes. She definitely gets a lot of opportunity to backchat me. I remember we were in one time we were in an argument and she was like, you don't have to use all the power all the time. And I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. Or once we were like having one of our living room protests and she was like, so were you treated well did they listen to you when you were a kid? And I was like, no, that they didn't really listen to me. They like blah, blah, blah. And she says, do you think that sometimes when you're talking to me, you just have those feelings from when you were a child that they didn't listen to you and then you just scream and then you talk to me? And then I was like, oh. Wow. And I think that's one of the living room protests. It's the one that says, listen to your kid. So like I have like mad problems that she triggers me all day long with. She says stuff to me about like, this is my body. I'm like, get your socks on. I'm gonna hold you down and put the socks on if you don't put them on. She's like, this is my body. You can't do that. And then I have to come to the Center for Fiction for 7:00, and she does, anyways. But it requires more. It just requires more conversation and more space. But then she also. I don't hide anything. Like she know about like sperm and egg, and she know about all this stuff that, she fucking up the other first graders and second graders with information all day long. Oh my God. One of the parents actually called me and said, do you know that she told them that there was no Santa Claus and no Tooth Fairy? And I said, well, yeah. And she's like, why would you do that? And I said, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to have her lie? She's like, I'm not saying that. So, okay, then the conversation is finished. But anyways, so there's lots that I wouldn't, like I never hit her. I hit her once when she was 2, and she looked at me with, like, she just looked at me like, I cannot believe you just did that. Like, we don't put our hands on each other. Like, I was so fucked up for like weeks afterwards. So that, we don't do that, and but we have lots shouting matches in the house, and like, don't raise your voice at me. Well, don't raise your voice at me. And it just goes on. But I don't know. I'm more honest with her than any adult was honest with me as a kid. I let her in on a lot of what's happening with me in my head, in an age-appropriate language, of course. I also listen to her. Like, I think she has like great ideas, which I don't think that they thought that we had any great ideas. But I also have a lot more space, you know what I mean? I don't get up and go to work every day, so I can sit around and have like 45-minute arguments with my child. I don't have to go and catch the train, so that's like a privilege as well. But mothering is like, it shifts the center of you. And has you rewire almost everything about you. And if you don't do that, you end up doing the very same things. Even when you're working hard to rewire everything, you still end up doing the shit that your parents were doing. Some of the things that come out of my mouth, I'm like, Jesus Christ, why am I saying that to the child? But it comes out of you, and then you just like working hard not to say it again. And what I've done is like, I'm committed to paying for some therapy for her at some point. And I'm also like quick to say sorry, because I think that the people who harmed me as a child, I'm able to have more honest, healthy relationships with them now, those who are able to say sorry. And those who can't say sorry, that means we're still in the same place and I can't deal with you because you want to do the same things that you did when you were a kid. And but this mothering thing is like really fuck with you. It's like, there's nothing I've done that has moved so much in me. And yet, it's not everything about me. And then you still, I mean, I'm watching her now. She's like, no, I want to read. I don't want to talk to you. Like, no, I would rather not stay with you tonight. I'm going to go over to Isaiah and sleep. And I have to like figure out what I'm going to do with my evening, because for the last 10 years, for the last 8 years, every night I come home to the child. And then all of a sudden she's not interested in being with me. So then I have to figure out what to do and, you know, how to get laid again and like be on a date and all those things that you couldn't do beforehand. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a wild thing, because for that time you can't. Like, what kind of sex you can have.
Right, yes. Go with that. We can clap for that. Yes.
All right. So do we have time for one last poem?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so
Do you want the mic?
No. I'm gonna do it without. I'm gonna do it with this one.
All right.
Are you dying because I'm taking more time? Because, you know, I could also do it.
No, she had to go to the bathroom.
All right, so this is really going down in my booty.
Oh yeah, it went down. Oh yeah. I can hold it for you. Want me to hold it for you?
No, because I can't move. But you're black. Oh yeah, it went down. Yeah, it went down. I don't know if an Indian person would have said, yeah, it went down to me. But maybe, I don't know. But I feel like
I was just watching it.
I feel like any of these black women be like, yeah, it went down. Familiar to me. All right, so I'll do one poem. So do you want me to do the... look at this room. Can we have the lights up? How are you doing back there? A little bit, yeah. Where is this poem?
Sodom?
No, it's called Tsunami.
Oh, Tsunami, okay.
You see, I would know where to find it if I had a stack of papers.
Yeah, right.
But this thing here with this... Anybody know where the poem Tsunami is?
It's 63. Tsunami Rising?
Yes.
Yeah, 63.
Okay. So I do this for like all the, whatever. If it's for you. In the balance of human biology, all bodies are created equal. Everybody is about 70% water, regardless of race, religion, gender, sex, or sexual orientation. We all die after about 7 days without drink. But the idiots obsessed with category have decided that a double X chromosome designates me subordinate to all those with an X and a Y. Intersect those two X's with the fact of my blackness, and my existence is coded as dangerous, hostile, a direct threat to the endurance of the white patriarchy. And everybody knows that white men have spent centuries appropriating what they wanted. The gold they found in Africa wasn't enough, so they packed human bodies head to toe, submerged in a swamp of our own urine and feces. They dragged us across violent waters. Many of us drowned our young rather than let them live at the mercy of white men and their sons and their grandsons and their grandsons' sons. Just to keep breathing, some of us became one-dimensional. In the public imagination, in real life, in books, we had to become one thing or the other. Spinster or mother, virgin or victim, damsel or whore. Some of us went underground for centuries. Some of us let go, slipping away into the sunken place. Others revolted, took up arms, crawled through sewage, defied geography to build new lives in new cities. And that's how I found myself in Brooklyn, spending my nights reading tales of Nubians bathing naked in the Nile, Kushite queens equal to kings, all of them praying to a black woman named Isis, the most powerful goddess among gods. I imagine if I were her, I would use my might to smite every motherfucker who ever looked at a little girl with lust in his flesh. I would exact vengeance on behalf of every black woman who has disproportionately borne the weight of racial and sexual violence, while everybody in the suffragette movement and the black civil rights movement and the LGBT movement turned a blind eye to her swollen lips mouthing, "Me too. Somebody help me get him off. Me too, me too." Me Too. For centuries, we have endured the culture of rape and racism combined. For centuries, the world has stood silent while black women and girls were bullied by black men and white women alike. For centuries, anyone who wanted to hit something or own someone, they could decide we were it without consequence. Anyone could tag the black girl, the dark woman, the universal punching bag. For centuries, rape was a word black mothers never spoke aloud, but every daughter knew what it meant. Lie still, it will pass. Keep quiet, ignore the girl who screams too loudly. Don't you dare shame this good black family. And then something brilliant happened. A black woman named Tarana Burke inspired wealthy white women to say, Me Too. Herein wriggles the strange rubric of America's particular strain of racism. Ironically, the viral mobility of the Me Too hashtag was only possible because a white woman with power retweeted a black woman's words. Two words which unleashed a wildfire of public testimony, pulling the shroud of sexual violation from the shadows, shoving it onto primetime TV. Yet, 12 years after Tarana Burke's Me Too moment, black women are still largely missing from the public dialogue about sexual assault, and we are so tired of being disregarded. If you gave black feminists room to speak honestly, this is the letter we might pen to those white feminists whose crying consistently drowns out the sound of our suffering. Dear weeping white women, even as we cannot find safe space to show you where or when or how we were torn open, we are only holding this sorrow to keep our hearts from imploding. We are unable to process our pain with you because we are exhausted from centuries of holding you and your children. We have a hard time trusting you because you have never been able to stand by us, and we are so tired of explaining ourselves. If you wish to know more about the genesis of our rage, please Google us or read Bell Hooks or Brittany Cooper or the blogs of the bevy of black women writers your white publishers are too afraid to publish. For centuries, we have been carrying the weight of your white fragility, year after year, marching for everybody's freedom, protesting for everybody's privilege but ours. Well, this crazy mad gaggle of global witches and hags are done braiding beads of silent acceptance. Simply put, in this century, we intend to take up more motherfucking space. Sincerely, black womanist. Black women are crafting a collective response to centuries of being under everybody's water. We are a rising tsunami of fury come back to take back what was carried away without consent. And while we're here being candid, I might as well confess to you, I don't give a fuck if you never liked my big mouth. Black like my lover's ass. It has never endeared me to the white gatekeepers of white civility. My proclivity to speak the unspeakable is essentially the only defense I have against the indefensible violence of your man-made history. Inside my house, there is no talk of shadow talk of birds and bees. We trade indecipherable metaphors for concrete words that will not confuse my daughter. I tell her your mouth, your elbow, your hair, your arms, your legs, your vagina, your whole body belongs to no one but you. And if you ever feel even a tiny bit unsafe, you open your mouth and scream for help. If anybody at all does anything to make you feel uncomfortable, you tell me. I will always believe you in a world that so regularly demonstrates how much it hates you. This is what it means to be assigned the label of black and girl, and Yet, black women continue to survive, to thrive, to arrive into adulthood with the ability to laugh and love and wear hoop earrings and tight skirts to found social movements to liberate other motherfuckers from bondage. If any of this sounds like I'm speaking your story, this poem be for you, my love. If you have ever had to argue, you are no less deserving than your white counterpart. I am talking to you, my love. If you have ever been inspired by the magic of black women with thighs and asses that move mountains in their stride, if you have ever been told you speak too fiercely from the thick lip of your own truth, if you have ever been called girl like it was a fucking insult, if you have ever been called bitch, step forward. If you are itching to like a fucking bonfire in the house of white patriarchy, come, you stand with black women now. If you want to be free like Harriet Tubman, weapon in hand, wading through unfriendly waters, her power compelling the freedom of even those who did not want to be free. If you desire to be confrontational like Sojourner, if you wish to be audacious like Audrey, antagonistic like Angela, Gangster like Winnie Mandela, angry like Assata Shakur. Come, roar with us at our rallies. Sit beside us in school. Sing with us in church. Stand with us where it matters. Vote with us. Vote for us at these polls. Travel with us in the virtual, in the flesh, over these waters they have used against women as weapons. Across the lands of this rock we all call home. Let us crack open the ground with an uprising that will never again die down. No more water. We're ready to use fire next time. Or we say, no more water this time. We go use fire next time. No more water. Fire next time.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Glory. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Black women in the house.
Okay, so I know many of you will be at the festival next weekend, November 2nd.
Yes.
Staceyann will be with us opening it up. And we, the theme this year is reading as resistance, reading for revival. And this is the resistance I'm talking about. Just the energy, the love. Yes. It's just so, thank you so much for coming. And thank you to all the volunteers that are here. We're so excited to see you next weekend. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you, thank you.
If I could have everyone's attention, there's actually going to be a book signing for Staceyann in the cafe. So,
All right, right now?
She's there.
I'm on
She's
it.
ready. That was amazing.
Oh my God. And can I tell you,